Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
'Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. There's still time. The AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. I'm Michael McCall.
And I'm Zachary Adam Eisenhower.
And we're back with another packed podcast for you. It's just such a busy month. It's going to be such a busy few months as well, with everything that's coming up. MLS, winding down for the World Cup break. Then there is the World Cup. Lots of other football that will be continuing in BC during the World Cup. We'll talk about a lot of that in this show. This is a very Whitecaps heavy show. In action in two games this past week. Games that saw them win one, lose one, but they're back top of the MLS West. We'll talk about those matches in part two. We'll talk about some of the other Whitecaps news, the latest on the Save the Caps from relocation. In this part, we'll look at salaries that came out this week in part three, and then we'll round up the MLS and CPL action in part four with some great music sprinkled in along the way. And I'm very excited for Wavelength. It's a band we've not played before. They're a Gaelic metalcore band with their World Cup 2026 song.
Wow.
It's good.
Interesting.
You might want to turn the volume down a little bit when we get to that. It's really good. So, busy podcast coming up. It's been a busy week. How has this week been for you?
Yeah, it's been pretty great. 2 weeks in a row. We're recording this following evening football match. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're not long home before the record. So, can we keep you awake? That's always the problem. Because we're starting this one at half 11 at night. When folk are like, I'd like to come on the show, and then we tell them when we record, it's like, no, you're okay. We spoke to Jonathan Tannenwald when he was up here for the FIFA Congress, and he was like, I'd love to come on your show. I want to do it live. Do you still record late at night? I was like, yep. But you don't have to be live. You can talk to us beforehand.
Yeah.
So we'll maybe get him on to talk some World Cup, because we still haven't sorted out what we're going to do during the World Cup. Part of me wants to do daily podcasts, but already they'd be dated, so they'd be kind of quick, short, sharp hits. But then if we don't do it daily, it's still very fast-moving, the tournament anyway. We'll have a number of different people kind of co-host as well, because you're travelling all over with football, with personal stuff. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Football that I've watched this week, watched Auckland get to the A-League Grand Final. That goes the early hours of Saturday morning, 1 a.m. I think it's Saturday. 1 a.m. on YouTube, so free to watch. They're hosting Sydney, so it's going to be a big occasion. Former Whitecap Francis de Vries in that. The Scottish title race. Oh, wow. Went down to the wire, and more heartbreak for Hearts. I was at Dens Park when they blew it in 1986, when they gave up 2 goals in the last 10 minutes.
And 40 years later.
40 years later, more heartbreak as they went down to a 3-1 loss to Celtic. The third goal came with an empty net when they were just pushing for the equaliser. They just needed a draw. Then there was a pitch invasion. I don't know how much you've heard about this, Zach.
No, I haven't heard about that part.
So when the goal went in, the Celtic fans invaded the pitch, and there was meant to be a minute left to play. But the referee saw what was happening and just blew early. So Hearts were saying he blew early. That forfeited the game, which the SPFL have come round and said the referee's decision was final. He blew, so that was it.
Yeah. Was it at Parkhead?
It was at Parkhead.
That
But the Hearts fans were then verbally and they say physically abused the Hearts players when the fans ran on the pitch as well.
Oh yeah, there'll be some fines for that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Hearts immediately left the stadium, didn't do post-game media. The players left on the bus still in their kit.
Wow.
Because of safety issues. It's not been a great season off the pitch for Scottish football and that kind of stuff. On it, it was the best title race in living memory for many folk. It's just Hearts have the consolation that they're going to be in the Champions League. So there's a little bit of a money windfall there. And they are now owned by Tony Bloom of Brighton fame. And when he took over, this is his first year in charge of Hearts, and he said it was a 10-year plan for them to win the title. And they've come within minutes, really, of winning it in his first year. So it's exciting to see what happens with that.
Yeah, lots of dodgy officiating calls I heard, but this in the last three games. But the only upside in this for me is Alistair Johnson gets another trophy.
Yeah, he was playing the last couple of games as well, getting the start. So great that there's at least a defender back in the Canadian mix, because, yeah, it looks like they may have lost another one today. Kamal Miller in the Portland game against Miami went off looking in pain, clutching his hamstring. And considering the centre-back situation right now with Canada, that as much as you think there's better options, it now, Jesse's like, well, this might mean, yeah, I'll definitely bring Ralph Priso back because he's very close to being over his hamstring injury. So we need somebody that we know at least is going to be good to go. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We'll do some Canada stuff in some of the upcoming shows, but let's get into the meat and potatoes of this one, which is the latest on the Save the Caps movement. And it's been another busy week, especially for those of you that love announcements of meetings and then reading statements about meetings. It's like Christmas come early for people in that category. Before we kind of unpack some of the week's events, I feel I have to reiterate again, watch where you're getting your information from, what you're resharing, and check to see how legitimate the source is of stuff that you're putting out there. Now, I know for a lot of the people listening to this, it's like, you know who to look for, you know what to watch for, but it just feels there's so much misinformation getting put out there, or half-truths, or speculation that's getting put forward as truths, and you just trust the people on the ground. Patrick Johnson from the province has done yeoman's work this week in getting some of the background, speaking to people, old-style journalism of actually calling people up and having conversations and getting actual comments from people. Har, as well, has been on the ground at the hotel where the big meeting took place on Wednesday, speaking to people as well. People like them that cover the team regularly. People like us that cover the team regularly. I'm not saying we know everything or that our sources are better than some other sources, but you've got people like Jeremy Filosa out in Toronto, formerly from Montreal, and he puts a tweet out that was in French, and then the translation of that is just basically a rehash of what we knew 2 weeks ago, that the owners were told at the special meeting, at the last Board of Governors meeting, that there's a chance that the Whitecaps could move to Vegas because that's the offer that's on the table just now. There was no news, no new anything in Jeremy's tweet. And people were like, oh my God, it's the team's going to move. And he got this inside info because he said he heard from a couple of people. So first of all, remember that there was nothing new in that. But secondly, this is also a guy that doesn't think the moon landings were real and was taken off radio briefly for comments that he made to that regard about 18 months ago or so. And if you think That's not true. Google that and you'll see that that is true. Then on the Whitecaps supporters Facebook page, someone put up a post saying without comment, but it does no purpose to even put that out there, from a guy in Vegas that has 146 followers on Threads, and he posted, "Oh, I've heard that the Whitecaps players have been told that the team's moving to Vegas." Again, I will reiterate some stuff in this. The team doesn't just move. The owners don't get told by the league we're moving the team to Vegas. They have to vote on that. No vote has been taken place. It has to be at a Board of Governors meeting or an extraordinary meeting that's been called. None of that has happened. Now, that's not to say that the team won't move to Vegas. That could still happen. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that have to happen for the team to stay in Vancouver, as we've talked about, which feels like ad nauseum now this whole month. And all the meetings that were taking place this week would not be happening if this was a done deal. So there's been a lot said again this week, and we'll try to break some of it down in this part and pack some of the pertinent points that we can take from the meetings. And we'll add some stuff in that we know, some stuff that we've been told, and we'll speculate on some things as well from what's been officially said or indicated from the various meetings, but we'll mention if this is the speculation part. So we knew going into this week that there was a big meeting going to take place on Wednesday between the club, the league, government officials, First Nations, and some other stakeholders in all of this. The key point being to find out what the Whitecaps want and need to help them find a buyer that will keep the club in Vancouver. David Eby, BC Premier, for those listening outside of BC that might not know all the parties involved, was at a FIFA event at BC Place on Tuesday. I was at, lots of media were at, it was revealing the new grass pitch at BC Place, and we'll cover that in a future show or in an extra podcast. But he said at that event that the BC government want to find the solutions to keep the team here, and we're going into the meeting on Wednesday to do just that, but stressed that they needed to know what the Whitecaps wanted and what they needed to make that happen. Also stressing that if, to quote his words, the fix was in and the move to Vegas was already rubber stamped, just tell them that, be honest, tell them that they're moving and they won't waste everyone's time. He also said that the meeting on Wednesday wouldn't provide any final resolutions, and that drew the ire of so many when me and others put that out there, saying, well, he's already going in with a negative attitude, not wanting things to happen. But as we keep saying, these meetings, the round tables, the media availability, temper your expectations from what you are expecting from this. I know everyone is up to full-scale red alert, and rightly so, because it is a serious situation, and the club is in very real danger of leaving Vancouver. I'm not playing that down for a moment, but temper expectations from all these meetings, because it's going to be a long, drawn-out process. There's going to be many more meetings. More are already planned before anything concrete is signed and made public. So just, and I know it's hard, but just please, patience. Let the people that need to do stuff, do stuff. Now, the meeting itself was held at the Fairmont Pacific Rim Hotel on Wednesday afternoon. My understanding is that there were some pre-meeting meetings with various parties that didn't include the Whitecaps. And then the main meeting that did took place in the afternoon. And that included Whitecaps owners Greg Kerfoot and Jeff Mallett, CEO Axel Schuster, along with MLS Vice President of Club Performance and League Growth, Charles Altchek. Also in attendance were CONCACAF President and FIFA Vice President Victor Montagliani, the City of Vancouver, the provincial government, PAVCO, who's the Crown Corporation that runs BC Place, as well as representatives of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Those parties, not Whitecaps and MLS, but all the other parties, released a joint statement about Wednesday's meeting on Thursday morning, declaring, "This joint statement demonstrates a unified commitment from all partners to keep the Whitecaps in Vancouver for generations to come. The city, province, federal government, Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations, PAVCO and private partners are aligned and working together within a positive framework to deliver an even better future for soccer in our city. That includes improving the game day economic model at BC Place, exploring additional sponsorship opportunities, and advancing work on potential sites for a new stadium and development. Let's be clear, Vancouver is open for business. We are doing everything we can to keep the Whitecaps here, and we are committed to building a long-term solution that reflects the scale, ambition, and global future of this city." All very positive stuff. The Whitecaps himself issued a statement later on Thursday saying, "Vancouver Whitecaps and Major League Soccer met with government representatives, Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations, as well as corporate partners and other key stakeholders this week as part of ongoing discussions about the club's future in Vancouver. All parties have committed to continuing to work actively towards improving the economics of soccer in Vancouver. We are encouraged by this shared intent. As these discussions advance, the next steps will be for the Whitecaps and stakeholders to formalise proposals that will make the club more attractive for local ownership groups to come forward." So, very positive statements coming out. So let's unpack a little bit of this now. So, the meeting looked at both short-term and long-term solutions for the club in terms of stadium and land and other aspects. So it includes the Whitecaps' current home of BC Place. There's more meetings planned, as we talked about. Actual new ownership wasn't formally discussed at these meetings, with the belief being that they can't really move forward in that aspect of everything until the stadium future is clearer. One interesting attendee at the meeting, Zach, was former Vancouver Mayor and current Federal Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, Gregor Robertson. Now, when you factor in the fact that Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim, when Har tried to get an interview with him on Wednesday, he directed Har to contact a guy called Andrew Newman. So didn't know who that was, neither did Har, so we Googled him. He's the Director of Real Estate Services for the City of Vancouver. With him being a contact and Gregor Robertson, Housing Minister, being there, it's then hard not to kind of draw conclusions, join some dots, that a big part of the discussions here was on land and maybe the possibility of land swaps.
Which is an old theme in this whole stadium discussion, this, decades-old stadium discussion.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see if that really returns or if that really becomes a part of the potential solutions going forward.
This is kind of speculation in this bit. So we know Greg Kerfoot owns land.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that land, we know, was the doomed waterfront stadium project. The First Nations own land. The city and the federal government own land. So can a deal be done to exchange some of those or repurpose some already approved projects? For example, one parcel of land that the First Nations own is the old liquor distribution centre near Rupert SkyTrain, which is kind of near my hood in East Van. Now, that in itself is not big enough for a stadium, but there's other land around it that could be repurposed. And that area has recently gone through a whole kind of 40-year redevelopment plan to get housing and shops and entertainment things for the people in that area that's near a SkyTrain, and existing houses can get redeveloped into like 6 different units now on the one lot. So that could be a potential site that they think, well, could we repurpose that to a stadium, or could we swap that for another area in the city that would be more sensible for a stadium?
Mm-hmm. That would be interesting.
They could also fast track a stadium project in one of these other pieces of lands. The P&E, of course, we know is where the MOU is held, but the general kind of feeling is that the Whitecaps really don't want to try and redevelop that area, because this is the problem for a lot of the prospective areas that could now come into play. A new stadium, never mind the entertainment complex, but the new stadium alone, various parties have told me that it could be 5 to 10 years away in terms of planning, getting the land ready, all the other infrastructure that goes with it. So that's clearly the long-term discussions that are in play here from this meeting. The short-term one is obviously operating BC Place. And it was mentioned by Don Garber in the November meeting, as we've discussed in the last couple of shows. Could an option be the Whitecaps operating that stadium? So I'd heard the government were open to it, a 5-year deal initially, maybe even a 10-year deal, depending on what else could get done. And that then opens up naming rights, hosting concerts, as we talked about, and a lot more income revenue streams. So it's all positive, but nothing concrete. And then word came out in the last couple of days that the BC Lions are also in negotiations with BC Place. And they're said to be close to agreeing a new deal with PAFCO. So if the Whitecaps were then suddenly to operate the stadium...
Yeah, what would that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean to them? Because their fellow tenants are then controlling the venue, the dates, and all that other stuff.
It could be a huge... That would be... You think that'd be a huge obstacle or a huge part of this? You think that you couldn't finalize a deal with the Lions at the same time trying to make a deal with the Whitecaps to control.
It seems odd.
Yeah.
Unless that's just grandfathered into any future deal. It's like, you've got to honor this.
Yeah, but there is potential conflict with like Lions, like playoffs dates and Whitecaps.
Yeah, and also like we've got the new, well, the playoff dates might, with the new schedule, it might not factor in as much because the playoffs are going to be May. I don't think the Lions get underway to June, but the whole point is to then utilize the stadium more in the summer. For example, concerts. That then clashes with Lions dates, because we know the big concerts, the ones that are really big in money, the Taylor Swift's, Bruno Mars, where they have the stadium booked for like 5 concerts and days around that eats up a chunk of availability. When it comes to other land, the First Nations are obviously not wanting to say too much or go public, but the general official line, and there's been a couple of people that have First Nations connections that's got in touch with me over the last couple of weeks, say that they're definitely very much open to it, having part of the ownership. So that is then when we come to the whole second part of this, finding new owners. Now, how it's been put to me is Greg Kerfoot knows the value of the team and he's looking for that value. He's not necessarily prepared to take a short change deal to keep the team in Vancouver if there's other offers on the table that will give him more money. And however you feel about that, that is his right.
Yep.
I was talking to somebody about that just yesterday, and they made a very interesting analogy. Say you're selling your house and you've got 2 families that are looking at your house. And there's one family that you really like, and you'd be like, oh, I'd love them to take on my home and continue living here. And then there's another family that you maybe didn't hit it off with, but they've offered 10 or 20 grand more. What are you going to take? Because in the grand scheme of things, to you, with your finances, says 10, 20 grand's a lot. And then when you're coming to billionaires, the difference in, say, maybe 100 million, It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, none of this is surprising. We know that Kerfoot is going to not go below what he wants. We also know, I think, a key factor in this, Michael, too, is and we've mentioned this before, but there's no way MLS allows the club to be sold for significant below the valuation of the most recent expansion fees,
Hmm.
because that hurts them, and they obviously can block it because you actually have to not you're not just negotiating with Kerfoot for his shares, but the league or the
Yeah, it's two
subset
two
of the
thirds
board.
approval.
Yeah.
Like Kerfoot is by far and away the largest majority owner of the club.
Mhm.
So you're looking at, I mean, at least 60%, but I'm thinking you could be looking at 70 to 80% is what he owns. We don't know that, but
Well,
that's,
in the earlier MLS phase, people who would understand these other things told me he had Al had 26, and the other Steve had two, and Steve Nash had the other two. Now that could have definitely changed over the course of time in one way or the other, like going one way or the other. But again, I think that's not unreasonable to think it's in that ballpark.
mm. The First Nations, as we've mentioned the last couple of shows, they're rumoured to be part of a prospective ownership group or groups, because we've heard there might be two. Maybe they will pull together and work together, but they obviously don't have the money to commit to sole ownership. They have to be in it as part of a larger group. Like any government, it has to get approval from their people as well. But there's a lot of tax breaks then come into play when you've got First Nation ownership. Someone explained it to me as well that if the First Nations were then part of ownership or owner operating or whatever of BC Place, even though that's not on native land, it gets some tax breaks.
Mm. Yeah, that would make sense.
Patrick Johnson at the province has done great work this week, as
Yeah.
has Har, as I mentioned earlier. So a source confirmed to the province, the newspaper, that there have been past expressions of interest from at least the Musqueam band in buying a stake in the team. And there's also been several recent meetings between the teams and representatives of the three nations, as we know and Axel talked about. Now, another name that's kind of been put out there, former Canucks and Vancouver Grizzlies owner Arthur Griffiths. I'd heard that name a couple of weeks ago, but the person that told me that name, their understanding of it was it's not that he's looking to be a big investor here or drive the group. He's more trying to be a middleman to connect business people, local,
Mhm.
national, and international, into a group. And I mean, he's got experience in the sport and things, so that's a good thing. Obviously, if people will be like, "Oh, the
Yeah.
Grizzlies left," but he's a guy that knows how these things work and how to put consortiums together.
Yeah, the Grizzlies name strikes fear into people in relation to this conversation, but I agree with you. It's helpful. You can imagine it being helpful to have people with experience in this type of thing, to have them at the table or be a part of it or want to be involved or want to help find the best possible solutions. Yeah, I think it's hopefully encouraging.
So, still nothing concrete. Still a lot of work to be done. A lot of meetings to be had. I think it's quite positive. I'm over the 50% optimistic that a deal's going to get done for the stadium and they're going to stay here. So I'm confident of all that. I just, as I started this section off by saying, and we'll finish it the same way, I just urge patience. And I know it's hard because it's such an emotional issue and the team means so much to so many, but everyone is pulling in the right direction here. And it's a multi-stage process. And there could be a couple of weeks before we hear anything positive or firm. So just be patient, don't panic, watch what you read, and just keep crossing everything that a deal's going to get done. Personally, Zach, I'm hoping that this coming week
Uh,
we don't have a lot of stuff to talk about in off the field matters.
yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, and this is the last week before the last game before the break, so hopefully I'll be attending on that.
So we'll see what the coming week or weeks bring. It'd be nice if in the next episode of the show we don't have to talk about any Save the Cap stuff. and we can just concentrate on the football side. And that's what we're going to do now for the rest of the show, because we're going to look at the on-pitch action in the next part. A busy 2-game week for the Whitecaps. Some highs, some lows, but they finish top of the MLS West by the end of it all. And we'll be back talking about all of that after the first of 2 songs this episode from our Artist of the Month, Manson.
Hi, I'm Sebastian Berhalter, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's the first of 2 songs this episode from our Artist of the Month for May here at AFTN, English band Manson, and that was their 7th single, EP5 in their numbering system, She Makes My Nose Bleed. Released on February 3rd, 1997, it was the band's 4th single to be taken from their debut album, 1997's Attack of the Grey Lantern, and it gave the band what was to be their 3rd highest charting single over their career, peaking at number 9 in the UK charts. And we'll be back with another song from Manson to kick off the next part. Back to the football now, and we're going to look at the Whitecaps on the pitch action. It's been a busy couple of days for the Caps and a busy month of May on the road. They had a Texas 2-step over the last few days. Going into this week's 2 away games in Texas, I said in the last show that we need to be looking at maybe taking at least 4 points from these 2 games. We got 3, should have been 4. The 3 we got as well was from the match that I would have been happy just taking a point from, which was the Dallas game on Wednesday. And then Houston, I thought, yeah, that's going to be a 3-pointer there. It wasn't, ended up being a defeat. So a weird week, made even weirder by the results elsewhere, because those on Wednesday meant that the Whitecaps hit the top spot in both MLS West and the Supporters' Shield race. And then San Jose dropped 3 points on Saturday, which kept them there, even with the Whitecaps losing, although Nashville's win today against LAFC meant that they are now a point ahead in the Supporters' Shield standings. A win and a draw is what it all ended up to be. And all things considered, considering injuries, tiredness, other results, being on the road for 5 straight games that it's going to be this month, yeah, you take that.
Yeah, it's hard when you go from such great form they've been into, and then now having to have this extended road period and the challenges that brings. I felt like this is not the worst time of year to visit Texas. You know, you get these two Texas away games out of the way. Not as not typically not as hot and as grueling, but yeah, in one sense, I think it's totally understandable for Whitecaps fans to have a little disappointment. But again, in the big picture of things, they continue to go like pretty positive. I think, Michael, one of the most interesting things about it all was hearing Jesper Sorensen talk about the second half against Houston. And it sounded like it was like his in the league anyways, his least enjoyable half of football so far this season, or at least what we saw from his players on the pitch.
Yeah, moved away from what he wants him to do. And instead of taking the game to Houston, ended up on the back foot. And there were reasons for that we'll get into. First up was Dallas on Wednesday. I thought that would be the tougher game of the two. I mean, it was a battle, especially with how Dallas had been playing. Whitecaps come away with a 3-2 victory. And it was a little bit of kind of below the usual standards performance as well. It wasn't one of their best performances of the year, but they fought back, they came from behind, they got the victory. Jesper made one change to starting lineup from the team that had drawn in San Jose at the weekend. Emmanuel Sabi came in for Bruno Caicedo. Thomas Muller was back in the game day squad after illness, starting on the bench. Dallas had looked great the weekend before. Quick counter game, looked really dangerous, something you felt they would try and do against Vancouver, and they would have to be alert not to overcommit and leave that space at the back. It was the opposite. Dallas came out fast, and they almost got the breakthrough just 24 seconds in when Christian Capis raced in on goal, but he crashed his shot off the right post. Edir Campo obviously saw that against Houston and thought, hold my beer, I'll do that quicker than 24 seconds.
Yeah.
But Dallas did take the lead, officially in the 10th minute, after they got a penalty awarded in the 7th minute. And then there was 3 minutes of looking, was it a penalty, was it not? Tristan Blackman definitely impedes and kind of holds back on the jersey, but then lets go of it. So it was like, it definitely started outside the box. And it was whether it carried into the box or even on the line or not. I think it's hard to tell 100% either way. But because of that, you've got to go with the on-field decision, which was a penalty.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where even the best defender in the league can kind of get caught by the bounce of the ball and the movement of his opponent. And I don't think you can feel too hard and done by. Like, I agree with you that this wasn't overturned. It seemed reasonable, it seemed sensible. And I think when you look at it in light of the game as a whole, you can live with it.
Yeah. Peter Musa steps up, buries it. And for the third straight away game, the Whitecaps had given up the first goal and had to fight back, and they fought back and got not just a draw this time, but the victory. Unlike Houston, where it was then 4 straight road games that they give up the first goal, but it's not enough time to come back and do anything. So 2 goals in the space of 4 minutes had Vancouver in the lead. 23rd minute, Schick Sabali plays the ball back to a wide open Sebastian Berhalter, 25 yards from goal, and he crashes a fierce strike past Kalodi in the Dallas goal into the roof of the net. The Dallas keeper gets a hand on the ball, but he couldn't get enough to stop it flying in. I think he should have done better.
I think he absolutely should have done better. You talk about the ball going into the roof of the net. It only ends up in the roof of the net because the keeper puts it there. You can't win you can't win the lottery if you don't enter, right? If you don't have a ticket. But yeah, I think the Dallas coaching staff will be, I think, pretty disappointed that their keeper conceded this kind of goal. Berhalter continues to show his worth. Sorry, we'll talk about that more later. But it shows his quality when he brings to the team and how important he is for the Whitecaps.
Leaving him wide open at the top of the box as well was a choice that they were then punished for. And if Dallas weren't happy with that goal, they certainly weren't happy 4 minutes later when Asazi stretches to get to a low Edir Campo crossing from the right before Brian White could get on the end of it, and he ends up just directing it past Kalodi, and the turnaround was complete.
Yeah, and there was also the Kubas chance in there in between them where I thought
Mm.
Kubas had the ball in the back of the net. And I was like, hey,
Yes.
good for him. And then you realize, oh, it's not in the net. It's on somehow at the back of the net. But yeah, I mean, the go-ahead goal is one of those moments where again you put the ball into a difficult spot, and if your striker doesn't put it in the back of the net, there's a chance the opponent will, and that's what came to fruition in this case for the Whitecaps. So again, good attacking football, good crosses, good movement, create goals. They were full value for the lead at that point in the game after 27, 28 minutes.
Yeah, and Acampo had two good games. He's
Hmm.
really starting to get forward a lot more now as well, and he's a big danger on that right hand side, and he gets back quick as well, which is good. Dallas did finish the first half on the front foot, and they started the second half the same way, and then they got back on level terms in the 49th minute when Logan Farrington managed to get ahead of Matty Laborda to head home a Ran Benjamin cross, and we're all tied up, and you're like, oh, they've just let Dallas back into this after kind of really dominating. But the deciding goal came in the 64th minute. Kenji Cabrera had just been on the pitch for 3 minutes, lays it off to Sebastian Berhalter, and this time it's a curler to the far post, which Kalodi got both hands on this time and couldn't keep it out. He definitely needed to do better than that.
Yeah, I mean the Dallas equalizer that's the kind of way you can you can take advantage of a strong team like the Whitecaps, an in-swinging ball like that where you get the run in front of the defender. It's really just really hard to defend in general. I know in the past we've joked about it being Christmas in whatever month of the year when the Whitecaps have played some teams before, and this one I remember once it happened on Wednesday or whatever, just like wow, Berhalter really is getting the luck of the draw with these shots from outside the box. And
It was the
yeah,
goal of the match day. It was voted, but as
like,
always, if you let the public vote, you sometimes get strange choices.
is that because he's like a U.S. men's national team player?
Maybe.
Like,
Also, the Whitecaps fans were sharing it everywhere. Vote for Seba, vote for Seba.
yeah, it was not a quality goal.
It was a quality strike, but it wasn't
It-
a quality goalkeeping.
I would say it was well taken, and yeah, again causes problems for the keeper. But Michael, a professional keeper at this level
Oh,
has to.
no, yeah. You
If
have to
if,
keep that
if,
out.
if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt on the first one, okay, but the second one, first one he gets one hand to, and the second he gets both two. It's
He
yeah.
needs three.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would just let me put it this way. I would love to hear like Marius Rovda break down that that goalkeeping on these, someone like that who would just be like tear them apart.
Berhalter's performances this game and of late, it's had a lot of the American pundits really singing his praises. And I think it was Dax McCarty that said on MLS 360 that if all the US men's national team players just now, he's the in-form player. Which, if you're a US men's national team fan, is concerning. Not any disrespect to Seba in the slightest, but how are the other players playing like over in Europe? Because I haven't been paying attention. Is everyone that out of form on the men's national team?
I think Dax also likes him a little bit because I think he reminds him of himself a little bit.
Yeah.
But not just in stature and whatever, but the type of midfielder he
Yeah.
was.
And I'm not playing down Seba's contributions because he has been on fire this month.
Yes.
He's like really, he's up there for one of the player of the month nominations for sure when it gets to the end of this. And you've got to feel he's a lock to be in that squad for the US men's national team. And a guy, he might not get starts, but he's going to get minutes.
Yep. Absolutely.
After that, both teams had half chances to add to their tally, but it was a 3-2 final, sending the Caps top of the West. The only kind of negative coming out of it was in the 84th minute when Andres Kubis was forced off with what looked like a possible knee injury. He was grimacing, holding his knee on the outside. And with everything that's happened, Whitecaps-wise, with injuries, you're worried not just for the Whitecaps, but what this meant for his World Cup chances. But he was evaluated, trained on Friday, thankfully okay, started on the bench against Houston. Not that he got to stay there for too long because his replacement, then Oliver Larraz, went off with a hip injury. And he was icing it on the bench, and you've got to think he then now might be a worry for this coming weekend. Because Kubas won't be playing this coming weekend, because against Houston, when he did come on, picks up a yellow card, and he's going to be suspended for the San Diego game, which is bad news for the Whitecaps, but at least for Andres, it's good news for the World Cup. He's not risking any more injuries. He's definitely heading to the World Cup.
Yeah, which is great for him, but horrible for Oliver Larraz.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude gets the opportunity where he could get a little bit of a run of even a couple of games. Just felt so awful for him when that happened against Houston.
He was looking good against the Dynamo as well. It was like, oh yeah, this is Larraz we've seen a little bit of. Now he's getting a full game, and you thought they won't risk Kubas if they don't need to. And it's like he had a knock, he tried to continue, and then he just goes down trying to chase a breakaway. And yeah, I mean, hopefully it's not too bad, but you've got to think he's going to miss the San Diego game. And he's not going to be the only player that misses that game, which we'll now come to. Because heading into Houston, I was confident, as I mentioned, of the 3 points. Now, Sabi was out with an injury, and Caicedo was also questionable going into this. Started on the bench, didn't come on. I think that's more, though, how the game was playing out by that point, because it dictated that they needed someone that could come in with better defensive play than Caicedo has, and AZ has that, so got the nod. Disappointing 1-0 loss. If we'd taken a point from the game, I think I would have felt it was a great one after the 2 games we've drawn and I thought it was 2 points lost. I'd have been very happy with a 0-0 here or a 1-1. But they were kind of the masters of their own downfall. And it wasn't just we're finishing with 10 men, which we will come to very shortly. There's some genuine concern about the creativity and service right now in the final third. White has had nothing to work with in these last few games.
Yeah, I think part of that is when you take Thomas Muller out with injury. I know he started this Houston game. When you take him out of his rhythm. I think he's key for them, especially when you have no Ryan Gold. And then you're expecting a lot of that creativity to come from the wide areas, and you're right that it hasn't been to the standard that Jesper expects and that the fans have come to love and appreciate. And yeah, it's when you're a Brian White feeding on scraps is not really the ideal scenario, right? He's not. We've talked about this before. He's not like the kind of striker that is going to go out and create a ton of chances on his own.
He'll get the odd one or chasing down a long ball, running through or whatever, but he needs the service, and it's just, no matter who's there, it's just like severely lacking right now. And you look at where the goals have coming from, because it isn't White, and it's other players that's having to step up big time, which every team always needs, and the Whitecaps do need that, because you can't just solely keep relying on one player to be getting you the goals. But the Whitecaps were the better team in the first half, but in saying that, they only managed one shot on goal, and they couldn't take the possession advantage and controlling the play to the next level, which was putting it in the back of the net. Houston looked lively and dangerous on the counter in particular, but their downfall was it felt they were so slow in making decisions. They'd break forward, and then it's like they didn't know what to do. Should I just keep going? Should I try and lay it off? By the time they'd made their mind up, the Whitecaps had recovered and got players back.
Yeah.
There was a scary injury in the 22nd minute, Houston's Diadi Samaseku. And there's not many games where you see the ambulance drive on the pitch.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you're like, oh, this is a bad one. And you're automatically fearing the worst. Now, I thought it was just quite an innocuous challenge with Blackman. They just go up for it. I still don't really know what happened, but he looked cold. He looked out cold when he hit the deck. Mm-hmm. There was a 12-minute delay, and then the Mali international left it in the ambulance. He was later released that night and he was recovering at home. So that's the last we've heard. So that's a very positive update. He was alert and talking in the ambulance and then released after evaluation. But it looked really bad. I know you were listening at that point on the radio.
Yeah, so I took in this whole game actually on the radio because I was out. We were out driving, and yeah, so didn't. I still haven't actually seen the actual injury because they haven't didn't see it any. I didn't rewatch the whole game. I only rewatched the extended highlights.
Yeah,
So
they
I
wouldn't
just had.
stick it in that.
But yeah, Colin and Asa were saying that I don't think they showed the replay on the broadcast much, did they? Or
Couple of times initially, and then they realise how serious it is.
seriously? Oh, okay.
But they even let Ben Olsen come on the pitch, and when that happens as well, okay,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on here. I don't know all the medical protocols and everything. It just seemed a little bit slow. They were getting waved on, and it seemed to take a bit of time for them to get the stretcher on. And even then, I think they were expecting it to be a cart, but it was a stretcher that they pushed on, and it was a lengthy delay, and it definitely upset the rhythm. And like Jesper noted that post game, that kind of knocked out the rhythm because they were starting to flow, and you felt the first goal was coming. And then after that, it was never quite the same for the Caps, and then Houston kind of came into it a bit more. I mean, it wasn't a game with a lot of goal scoring opportunities for the Whitecaps. In general, the best chances fell to Houston. The big turning point, of course, comes in the 64th minute. We haven't talked about this because I wanted us to talk about it first on the show just to get our instant reactions to it. But Yoi Takaoka, sent off, straight red, comes out of his box, misses the ball but still misses the ball and takes out Bogusz. Straight red, which my understanding is it was for Dogso and it wasn't for violent conduct. I don't think it was either, to be honest. There was 3 defenders had got back by that point, and Bogusz was getting pushed wide, and he had a Campo right behind him. I don't know that you can look at that and say it was a clear goal-scoring opportunity that was denied.
Yeah, especially again, so listening to this on the radio and hearing it, you're just like, oh yeah, it must have been horrendous. And then when I watched it back, it's like, okay, he gets caught out by the bounce of the ball. It feels like it just the way he just mistimes it and yeah, gets the guy. And I agree with you. Yeah, it's out of the box to the, I guess Taka is right. Yeah, I think if Bogusz gets to that ball, I don't think it's that. Even with Takaoka on the ground, I don't think it's quite that great a scoring chance that maybe the official is viewing it as. But if you put the shoe on the other foot, Michael, if that happens against the Whitecaps and it's not given as a red card, it's only given as a yellow, I think you're going bloody mental, right?
Definitely. I would look at it that way. And because it was given on the pitch, there's got to be really valid things. I do wonder if it might get rescinded or if the Whitecaps might appeal and it gets put to a yellow. I guess we'll find out in the coming days.
I don't think they'll do that.
I think it was a yellow, but maybe it's just bias coming in. And I would be screaming for it probably the other way, but then when I saw it back, I would like to think I would be like, no, the defenders were back, and think that it wasn't, but I don't know, we'll see. I'm kind of also hoping it gets rescinded because I would really love Yohei to be between the sticks against San Diego, because Isaac Boehmer comes in, or Bomir, as the commentators delighted in calling him throughout the game, although maybe it should have been more Bomir, because he had a few scary moments, maybe none more so than the decisive goal. 6 minutes into stoppage time, Artur lays the shot on the ball off to Guilherme. He gets it, kind of cuts inside a little bit. His shot hits off the back of White. Even with the deflection, right? Boehmer's down there at his near post. He has to be stronger. We're speaking about Collodi in the Dallas game. Boehmer has to be stronger and he has to be better. And he'll know that.
Yeah, no, we hear this said often, right? No keeper should be beaten at their near post, right? Yeah, it's an incredibly frustrating kind of goal to give up, especially after working so hard for whatever it was, almost half an hour. I guess, yeah, half an hour with being down a man. You thought, okay. I mean, I'm sure you were thinking like, oh, I got it right, 4 points.
Yeah.
And you and I, the one part we kind of did discuss or whatever is, despite him making actually some good saves in this game, he hasn't been in the greatest form, which is sad because he's been a great keeper for the Whitecaps. When he's been called upon or we given cup competitions or whatever, he has done very well. And it seemed like his star was rising. I think it was even in the offseason, were one of us or both of us not saying, hey, if they sell Yohei and they promote him,
Yeah.
we felt confident, I
Yeah.
believe.
And
I think we
Vanny
both
had
said that.
said before he was sacked that to him, they had two number
Two number
ones, a
ones.
1A or a
Yeah.
1B. But
Yeah.
I've seen Isaac play in a couple of games for WFC too, and he's been shaky in that as well.
I saw that one with you, and yeah, he didn't
Yeah.
look his best. I mean, his family was like on point for the cheering
Yeah, they were right
whenever he did,
beside us, so we were
whenever he made a save.
like,
But yeah, so you just feel bad for him because he's made that save many times before,
Mhm.
and he'll make it many, many
Yeah,
times in the future.
keepers
But
make these errors. And part of it, though, is playing because he hasn't also played a lot of the WFC2 games. And he's training every week, obviously. He's sitting on the bench. But it's getting that playing time and getting in the rhythm. You're coming into a game cold. He was tested a couple of times. He had a good save where he got I want to say it was Guilherme that was through, mainly because Guilherme was through so many times in the game, and he like tips it away. So we know he's a good keeper. I think when you're a keeper, you just brush those things off. You don't let it play on your mind.
yeah,
But
did you mention it? Does it take a deflection off? Was it White's butt?
yeah, it comes off the
Yeah,
back of White.
which is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Also for White, for Bomer, for the team, it takes, but it goes to show what does it take to beat the Vancouver Whitecaps this year?
Yeah.
Some really, really unfortunate, bounces.
Yeah. Or long range bangers or
Yeah,
Houston had looked a better
and a
team.
red card.
And red cards certainly plays into it. But after they went up a man, it kind of felt only a matter of time before they'd find a way through. But then that deep in the game, yeah, I did think, okay, we've got through this, we've got the point. Lacks defending, it stings a little. But the team did feel tired and they felt a little flat, and it's understandable because although it's not the hottest it could be down there, it still was quite hot and muggy, and the sweat was drenching the players very early in the game. Some of the performances, like I don't think Jeevan Badwall's been great the last couple of games now. And obviously he was playing as a 10. This game he started on the wing, which I think he was a bit better. He just seems like he got all those early minutes. He was looking really good, but he's maybe kind of plateaued a little bit, if maybe even taken a step back the last few games.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from on that. I think again, he's young.
Oh yeah,
He's playing mo more than they probably, ideally planned out for him. I think he's going to have, a few lower moments, if you will. I'm not too concerned in the bigger picture. Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe it's frustrating in the short term that his form isn't what you'd hope for, but yeah, I hope people don't get down on the kid because yeah,
oh well, there's a few folk I've seen on the Facebook page that's really down on him, along with some other comments as well, which I think is very unfair. He
yeah,
just hasn't been as effective in these two games as he was early on. But again, a young player playing more, there's more game tape on him.
hmm
So he has to find ways to do that, much like the Whitecaps still have to find ways of getting past the low block and various things like that. I think with Cuba suspended, if Larraz isn't good to go, you're probably looking at Badwall in the midfield pivot with Berhalter against San Diego, and I like him there. Ralph Priso might be good to go in the sixth role. They were targeting him being back before the break, so we'll see what he looks like at training this week. As mentioned, though, it's the lack of creativity through the middle, on the wings. They've got to find a way to unlock teams. San Diego's a team that likes to attack. So I think this game this weekend will be more open. So I think that will play into the Whitecaps a little bit better. Now, with the teams below them dropping points, it didn't prove too costly in the current shape of things. So they do remain top of the West going into the final round of matches before the lengthy World Cup break. San Diego are still kind of getting players back from injury. I imagine there'll be a little bit of rotation. If Sabi's good to go, you'd imagine he would get the start. If Caicedo's good to go, maybe he gets the start as well, or Sabali gets the start. It's been a challenging run of matches, but there's just one to go now before the break. The Whitecaps know that at worst, they'll be second in the MLS West standings if they don't take all 3 points against San Diego. But even with that, they've still got a game in hand. Then most of them, few players will be going away, but most of them can rest, hopefully strengthen in a couple of areas when the window opens as well, and then look to come back in top condition when everything restarts in July.
Yeah.
We'll round up a busy few days of MLS action in part 4, and we'll look at the lie of the land. But we'll be back talking more Whitecaps, news of the week, off the pitch, that doesn't involve sales and relocation, after the second song this episode from our Artist of the Month for May, Manson.
Hi, I'm Ranko Veselinovic, and you're listening AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's the second song from our Artist of the Month to feature this episode. The band is English band Manson, and that's spelled Mansun, if you are looking to check out more of their stuff from hearing them on the show. And that was their 8th single, their 6th EP, Tax Loss, released on April 28th, 1997. It was the 5th and final single that was taken from the band's debut album, Attack of the Grey Lantern. It reached number 15 in the UK charts, and it was helped by a stunt for their video of the song, where £25,000 in £5 notes was thrown from the balcony of Liverpool Street Station in London to the people below, causing quite the kerfuffle, as you could imagine. Each note had a sticker on it saying tax loss. The video was actually directed by Francis Ford Coppola's son, Roman Coppola. Many of you will know him from his work with Wes Anderson, and it certainly got the band a lot of attention. And we'll have 2 more songs from Manson in the next episode of this show. But we're going to get back to the football chat now, back talking Whitecaps. So in the last show, we mentioned that the Caps Canadian Championship quarterfinal opponents were now known, and it's going to be another game, the fourth battle in 8 years with CPL side Cavalry FC. So the dates and the venues are now known as well, and the Whitecaps, as the higher seed, should be hosting the second leg of the quarterfinal against the Cavs, but unfortunately, stadium unavailability. They couldn't get BC Place because of FIFA, and their choice of Swangard wasn't available for the dates of the second leg. So it's meant they've had to swap the hosting of the legs. So the Whitecaps will now host the first leg of the tie at Swangard on Wednesday, July 8th. And that's going to be the team's first game back after the World Cup break, whereas the Cavs will have been in action in that time as well. So definitely a banana skin game for the team. The second leg is now going to be in Calgary at Spruce Meadows on Monday, July 13th. And it's the day after the Calgary Stampede wraps up. So hopefully that'll mean some slightly cheaper hotel prices for anyone making the trip like myself. And some fans have got in touch a little bit disappointed, a little bit angry that they weren't able to get tickets for the game because those on sale went quickly. A couple said they didn't understand why there wasn't the opt-in facility. And basically, it's just due to the capacity. The capacity at Swangard, you're looking at 5,000, which is about a third of the amount of season ticket members alone. So they couldn't have everyone opt in because there was no way that they could have everyone guaranteed a ticket. So that is why it's been done the way it's done. And I know it's meant that some folk have missed out. Hopefully the Whitecaps can maybe look at the demand and think about maybe putting additional bleachers in. I'll check with the club about that this coming week to see if that is an option. But it's going to be a great game at Swangard. Great to see the Whitecaps first team there. Obviously the Twos and Vancouver Rise play out of Swangard as well. So looking forward to that one on July 8th. It's the day after the last of the World Cup games as well here in Vancouver. The round of 16 match, whoever is going to be featuring in that. Likely to be Portugal or Colombia, the way the draw is shaping up. So good chance to have a number of people still in town for the World Cup to maybe get along to that game as well if they could get some extra tickets released. Some other Whitecaps news, some World Cup Whitecaps news, Zach, as some of the squads have started to get finalised. One of them being Tunisia. And Ryan Alumi, a little surprisingly for me, I've got to say, just really because of his form this year with the Caps, has been included in Tunisia's final 26-man World Cup squad. Great for Ryan, great for the club. Tunisia playing a very tough Group F, which arguably for me is the group of death this time around. They've got the Netherlands, Japan, Sweden, and I think all four of those teams will have hopes that they can get through the group stage as well. So it's going to be a tough one for Tunisia, but they have looked good in their qualifying for this tournament as well, one of the earliest teams to qualify for it. So fantastic for Ryan. Wish him all the best. We hope to catch up with him this week to get a little chat about the World Cup coming and just Tunisia at the World Cup and some of his World Cup memories. We've got a lot of interviews in the bank that we're going to bring you once the MLS season runs up and the build-up to the World Cup as well. So looking forward to bringing you what we've been up to over the past few weeks. It's also great for the Whitecaps because FIFA announced this week that they're going to pay clubs close to $11,000 per day, and I believe that's US dollars as well, for every player released for the 2026 World Cup. Even if a nation crashes out in the group stage, clubs are guaranteed to receive around $250,000 per player. So the Whitecaps will have Illumi and hopefully Berhalter and Kubis away for certain as well. Possibly Ralph Priso, maybe Sheikh Sabali, maybe even Sam Arakukbi, although that one does seem a little bit of a stretch. But nice little windfall of cash coming the Whitecaps' way. And in light of all the things that's been said about revenue, very good timing indeed.
Yeah, good for Illumi. I feel like it would be in this moment. It would be hard for him to make the breakthrough with Canada. So good to see him progressing with Tunisia. Yeah,
It's kind of short-term thinking, I know, but this might be his only chance to ever play at a World Cup because he might not make the breakthrough.
yeah, you're not wrong. So I don't hold a grudge against him. I would never hold a grudge against him for that. I think he's making a decision for right now in the moment. And you're right. Yeah, you can get into a World Cup squad. You take it because you don't know what the future holds. And yeah, so I'm happy for the kid, and I hope it does inspire him, encourage him. I hope he gets even some minutes would be awesome. It just helps with his second half of the season or whatever, final 2/3 of the season or whatever. For performing for the Whitecaps. So yeah, wish him all the best, unless obviously he plays Canada or Germany
Or Scotland.
or Scotland. Get in, mate. I don't know.
I don't know why you did an English accent there.
I know.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's too much Harry Kane. That's what it is.
Oh, don't get me started.
Hat trick hero.
Oh my goodness.
We won't start you in Bayern. But I'm really, really pleased for Ryan. Like we've spoken to him a couple of times. We've been following his journey from the twos to the first team, and now we'll hopefully speak with him this week about this World Cup journey. And he's got close ties to Tunisia. I know he was born here, but his family are from there. He told us in an earlier interview he went back every year to visit family for weeks. So there is a strong cultural and family connection there. Last kind of big Whitecaps news of the week. The MLS salaries came out this week, and it made for some very interesting reading from a Whitecaps perspective. The Whitecaps are the 5th highest spending team in the league when it comes to salaries, just over 24.5 million. Their cap hit is just over 12 million, with another 12 million being off budget. The Galaxy are above them in 4th. Atlanta are 3rd, LAFC are 2nd, and no real surprise, Zach, Miami 1st, with nearly 22 million more spent on salaries than LAFC. And when you consider LAFC's got Sun on a huge wage there and some other big hitters, 54.5 million Miami spent on salaries, which is more than 28 of the club's salaries combined.
Yeah, combined, yeah. I mean, it's not surprising that Leo Messi makes whatever 28 million or so, and that when you take away his salary, that the rest of Miami's roster is still ahead of the Whitecaps.
Yeah,
which is kind of crazy to think. I do not remember last year how high were the Whitecaps. Obviously, you have this 5 million from Thomas.
I think they were about mid-table. I haven't looked at that, but I'm pretty sure they were mid. They've definitely shot up, and some of that is the salary tweaks for like White and Blackman, and there's some. We'll break down some of these. There's some big numbers in there. There's a great breakdown of every club on a site called MLSrosterview.com. Check that out. They've got some great stuff in there. And it broke the Whitecaps roster down for being the 2 designated players, and obviously Muller and Gold. There's the 3 under-22 initiative players, Cabrera, Caicedo, Ocampo. That we all knew. But there's 10 TAM players. Adekugbe, Blackman, Kubis, Laborda, Pupe, Sabali, Sabe, Shonlau, Takaoka and White. So when they look at the real spend figures, about 36% of the Whitecaps salaries go on designated players. Muller is on 5.1 million, Gold is on 3.67 million. 5.4% is spent on under-22 players, and 42.6%, so almost half the salary is on TAM players, with the senior players then on 16%.
That doesn't seem unreasonable to me. Do we from that website, do we know how that compares to other teams?
Well, I haven't looked at everyone else, but I think that the TAM players is more than a lot. I looked at a couple of others, and the TAM players, it is a lot more. But I put that down to really good roster management and salary cap management over the years. Also,
there's their approach to designated players, right?
Yeah.
Well, most clubs would have a higher percentage of designated players, right? When you look at like Miami, it would be ridiculous. Their their DPs would probably be 60 to 70% of the roster.
Yeah.
Which you see evident in their backline play.
Yes. Weak, weak, weak.
Falcone.
Both spellings of weak.
Yeah.
Breaking it down by position, 19.4% of the Whitecaps' salary goes to the attack, 48.7% to the midfield. Obviously, Thomas and Ryan kind of fall into that category, so put that up. 27.3% on the defence and 4.6% on goalkeeping. So let's dig into the individuals. And I think we can break them down into two categories. Category one, the bargains, the steals, and you need to get on the phone to your agent, mate, and have a look at some of these figures. And then the second category of, what the fuck? There's some great value pieces in terms of what you're getting on return off the pitch. So, like, take Johnson, 89,000 he is on. And he's contracted to 2027 with 2 option years. And he's been phenomenal for the Whitecaps this year. That is even better than bang for your buck. Jeevan Badwal, 113,400. So he's a homegrown, playing a lot of minutes, as we touched upon in the last part, probably a bit ahead of where he was even maybe expected to be this year. Takaoka, 818. It's less than before. And one of the top goalkeepers in MLS, I think good value for that. Ralph Priso, superb value, just under 190,000. And his contract is up at the end of the year, but there is a 1-year option. And that has to get renegotiated. He deserves a big pay rise. Then you've got Blackman and White that have had their new deals. They're just below and just above $1 million respectively with their new deals. And then we started to look at some surprising figures in comparison to them. So Emmanuel Sabi, for example, on 1.167 million, 100k more than Brian White.
That's a concern.
It kind of is because it's a player that you've brought in that's been in Europe. And there's another one we're going to look up shortly in that category as well.
Okay,
that comes with a higher salary as you bring them in.
It does. But if you're Axel and if you're Jesper and you're the Whitecaps as an organization, you really have to be careful in how you manage this, right? You only need to look at Whitecaps history, at what disparity in terms of production and playing time can do within the squad itself. This is not just being read by you and I, Michael, and our listeners and the Whitecaps fans out there. Everyone in the locker room is reading this. Landon Donovan famously talked about, in his book about the disparity in the locker room, in the David Beckham era, the awkwardness of it all. But the lesson that they need to make sure that they learn in Vancouver is in their own locker room, where you had a young Brazilian striker who was getting 1/5 of his European counterpart, and yet outperforming him, especially in goals. But was also, his goals were contributed highly by the European, but that made the Brazilian and his agent and the people around him feel unwanted, uncared for, undervalued by the club, and ultimately led to his really unsavory departure.
Yeah, and for newer listeners, of which I know we have a few, especially since Thomas Muller signed, we're talking about Camilo Sanvezo, the name that we don't try and mention too much. I still think was a great player for us. And Eric Hasley, who was the designated player.
No.
Oh, we're not talking about Eric.
No, it was Kenny Miller.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought it was Eric that you always had the problem with.
No,
oh, it was Kenny's salary.
It was Kenny was on, I think, crazy money compared to him. Yeah. Because remember, he was here with Eric, but Eric was gone after a year and a half.
Oh, yes.
It was Kenny, and it was him and Kenny. Do you remember that year where the Whitecaps attack? Now, some listeners, this will blow their mind. The Whitecaps attacking trio was Camilo, Kenny Miller, and a young Russell Tyler. Do you remember that? He
was doing
right?
Phenomenal with assists.
Yeah, he was. He was
crazy year.
Great year for him.
Yeah.
But anyways, in that attack with that trio. We learned through that process and through his departure that he felt, I don't want to put too many words in his mouth or emotions in his heart, but he felt like the situation was unjust.
Mm-hmm.
And
it wasn't handled well by all sides, really. But
I'm not.
He
So I'm not
got that.
saying. I'm not saying this is an apples to apples
Oh
comparison.
no, but also I would want to. I was wanting to point out as well. Like Sabi's salary is high, but he contributed so much last year. He's having a dip this year, but hopefully we get the Sabi of last year in the second half of the season. So he is worthy of that. But Brian White's going to look at that and think, I've just got an increase, and I've had all these career years, and I'm still on less than him.
Exactly. So you can talk about Sabi had great contributions. It's understandable. He's coming from Europe, blah, 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 blah. But Brian White should still be ahead of him, right? Like
But the
Brian,
big
no
problem is
one's done
that is
more.
MLS's problem in that domestic players are undervalued. They're
Yeah,
seen as cheap commodities,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's not right. We've said that for years. And if we're looking at domestic players,
Oh my.
I bring forward you the case of Sebastian Berhalter. Right now, for me, the Whitecaps Player of the Year.
Yep.
480,000 is what Seba is on. His contract is up at the end of the year, and there's no options. He can walk on a free at the end of the year. And then I've seen people say, oh, the Whitecaps need to get him signed up. It's not as simple as that, because he has to accept the deal. If you think the Whitecaps do not have a deal on the table for Sebastian Berhalter, you're crazy. And I've seen some American pundits saying that, oh, the Whitecaps aren't trying to get him signed up. Of course they're trying to get him signed up. But it's not that simple a negotiation when the guy can walk on a free at the end of the year to a European club.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's as simple as this, Michael. Whitecaps fans right now are very worried that the Whitecaps might relocate out of Vancouver for next season. And we talked about the optimism about that in the first part. Whitecaps fans need to be prepared that Sebastian Berhalter will not be a Whitecap after the season.
Yeah.
I cannot see any way, shape, or form in all of this. Because you're right, Axel absolutely would have been talking to his people, would have been trying to up him to get him to more years, give him the money he's worth. And the only reason a Berhalter says no on that is because he's thinking about his next move and where it is and what it's worth and all that kind of stuff. And this to me really signals that. And then you think the disparity between Sabi and White is concerning. Oh, as everyone has already pointed out, the difference in what Berhalter's on and what new central midfielder Oliver Larraz is on is shocking.
Yeah, he's on just under 500,000, 197,000 basically more than Berhalter. Now, part of that, again, comes down to MLS mechanisms and contract structure for homegrowns. And that's what Larraz was with Colorado Rapids. I'm with you in that I don't see Berhalter being a Whitecap next year. But I don't necessarily think it's done and dusted. I think there is a way to keep him. And there's other factors that come into this as well, in that he's spoken about, he almost quit the game when he was with Austin because he didn't feel he was good enough. And Vancouver, as a club and as a city, reignited his passion, his belief, and he's shown it on the pitch. And exponentially, year upon year, he's got better and better. He loves this place. And not everyone wants to up sticks and live overseas. And we've spoken many times about the grass isn't always greener. If you land in the right place, it's a lot better. I could see an outcome if they decide to make Berhalter a designated player, that he might decide to stay. With a clause in the contract, if a big European team came in, the Whitecaps let him go.
Yeah, I could see that. I just think that there's no advantage for a Berhalter to miss out on the opportunity he's in, where he can go to a side anywhere in the world for free, but also, and then not cost him anything.
In the form of his life as well.
In the form of his life, essentially off the back of a World Cup, where he can increase, typically, he would be able to increase the type of signing bonus he can get because he's free. Yeah. So it feels, that's why I say it feels like he's done after this year. So enjoy him while you can.
The other option is if he has a great World Cup, someone comes in for him in the summer and the Whitecaps are like, well, we may as well get something for him. which
Yeah.
we've seen in the past. Players have a short career, and as we sadly know, it can be derailed. One bad tackle, one twisted knee, your career's over, you're done. Players as well, like the top players, they perform the top level for year upon year, and they've got larger windows. But for many players like Ali Ahmed, Sebastian Berhalter, you want to capitalize on being at your peak form. Now, Seba could get even better because he is improving year upon year. But right now, this is the time for him to bet on himself and say, look, this is what I'm doing. A new adventure in a higher league, a new challenge. Let's see if I can do this. I've never spoken to Seba about his desire to go and play in Europe one day. I think we do often think with North American players, oh, everyone wants to go and do that. But not everyone does. But he has the passport options to get him there as well. And as you've just pointed out, the lucrativeness for the other clubs to get a free agent, it would be hard to keep him, but I don't think it's impossible. His agent, though, will look at this and go, yeah, no offence to Oliver Larraz, by the way, who his agents have done a good job to get him these contracts to begin with. But that was one of the two big eye-popping ones for me.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of others, though. Sheikh Sabali. This is just ridiculous for me. He's the third highest player on the team, behind the two DPs. And again, it's part of the problem with him being a European player and coming in on a big salary. Just over 1.4 million. And to me, in no way, shape, or form is he worth that salary hit.
No, and you can just imagine the increase in expectations on him now that the fans know what he's making and where he is in that hierarchy. And yeah, we talk about this, and I know I remember going back all the way to Alexander Morfa and talking about this with him, a guy who's now essentially like an agent, and how this is not a part of his experience growing up in European football. No one knows these things and talks about these things. And yeah, there's maybe some stuff on Transfermarkt, but not always the details and the specifics. And no one blinks twice at what footballers make because they know how significant it is, how the clubs are and what the clubs are making and what they mean to the communities and, all that's a part of that.
Yeah, and Sabali comes from Ligue 1, so it's a top European league.
Exactly. So I just hope that none of this impacts not just the locker room dynamic, amongst these players. So again, the fan expectations, or maybe how the fans respond to performances that aren't, as good as they could be, or whatever. Because
we've talked so many times over the years that the DP tag is just a millstone around players' necks, and it's like immediately, well, we need production if you're a forward.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come, it's like, he's a designated player. What a waste of a designated player spot. And we've had those here, sadly, more than I can even count on the one hand, I think. Now, Sabale's still finding his feet here. He might become a great player and be banging in goals and assists left, right, and centre. And I'm not saying he's playing terribly. I haven't seen the quality, though, that even makes me think he's an MLS starter. I've seen flashes, but I haven't seen the consistency. Maybe a guy that comes off the bench. But then this is, I think, one of the rare misses in recent years from Axel and Quinn that I just don't know how they justify that salary.
You're not wrong. It will be interesting. It's the kind of thing where is he just here for the year then? You know what I mean? If he doesn't hit those levels and or justify is probably the word, justify his place within the hierarchy, then is it someone they can move on from?
Yeah, I'm just looking at his salary. So he's signed to the end of the 28-29 season.
Is that all guaranteed?
Yep. And then a 1-year option after that.
Yeah, so there's got to be an expectation that he'll be picking things up as the season progresses, and or I guess next year expect to be in full flight, because that's I mean,
the cap hit, we should say, is just over $1 million. There's a transfer fee involved, which this MLS roster view site has his transfer fee at being $1.15 million, which is $287,500 per year on the whole salary cap thing.
Yeah.
But then if he isn't performing here, how do you move him on for
True.
to clubs? But at the same time, he's a Senegalese international and he could be at the World Cup. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
We'll round this off by looking at two of the injured guys that salaries as well are quite eye-popping. Sebastian Schonlau, who's just had injury after injury and he's got another one. He's on 776,000, just over that, with a cap hit of 862,000 because of the transfer fee. And I mean, even without the salary, that's looking like a bad addition because of the rise of Ralph Priso and the other options we have there. But then you've got the interesting and intriguing case of Sam Adekugbe, who's on just under 1.4 million. Canadian international, we know what he brings. That in itself's a high salary, but again, he's a player that's come back from Europe. But he's injured. It's a position with so much depth. And the guy that's holding that position just now, we go all the way back to Tate Johnson, that's on 89,000.
Yeah.
I don't dislodge Tate just now if Sam's fit.
Let me put it this way. I think Sam is worth that money when he's playing and he's playing at his top level. What he brings in terms of experience, his the fact that he's a Canadian international. You know, I think it's just the injury history that make it hard to swallow. And I mean, again, I don't remember making good money because, like you said, his career will be short, right? His career's 15, 20 years less than that. And so you hope he can save this and invest this and prepare for, the after football stuff. But, and more importantly, we hope that he overcomes this and gets back onto the pitch and doing what he loves to do and doing it well and contributing. But yeah, again, there will be fans who... Oh,
there are. I've seen the comments already.
Get very frustrated about this.
I do feel, though, as well, for fullbacks, that's a high salary. For that salary, you need good output offensively as well as good defensive stats. He is capable of producing it.
Yeah.
But again, we have a very stacked position there. He's a guy that's come through the system here. We've so much time for him. We love him. The injuries he's had been heartbreaking. The stuff he's went through off the pitch over in Turkey, etc., has been heartbreaking. You don't begrudge players making their money, but I would try and move him on if we could. I'm happy with Tate, Matej Laborda, and Gerasimenkov back there. Again,
though, the problem with moving him is that injury history. Even if he was fully fit, it might be a difficulty. And then, where's he going to go? He's also in the season of life where he's about to get married, right? So it's, I know, for the player, it's like, what does he want and what's the best situation for him presently and future? And
to put it in context, though, those three players I mentioned, Laborda, Johnson, and Gerasimenkov, their three salaries combined are the same as Sam's.
Yeah, and most of that's Laborda.
yeah, he's on 1.1.
Yeah.
Who I do feel has earned that with his performances. He's right behind Berhalter for me for my player of the year. Might actually put him in my all-star 11. I have him ahead of Blackman as our best defender just now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the salaries. It's always a big talking point. I still don't really like them being released because of all the issues that you've just brought up that can happen. And we're not saying they do in the Whitecaps locker room. They certainly do elsewhere because we've had players talk about that in the past. It's just the North American way. It's just more open. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Whitecaps chat for the show. A lot more football chat to come. And we're going to round off this part with the latest instalment of our Canadian Soccer A to Z. And we're up to one of the trickier letters.
Oh, not at all. This is an easy one.
Okay, just before the music there, you said it was an easy one, Zach. You get to go first.
Well, I get to go
I'm
first.
very curious who you've got then.
After you're going to be like, oh yeah, I should have thought you were going to say that. I'm going to go with one of those kind of not exactly traditional in comparison to the things we've mostly been talking about in this list. It's something that kind of connects with the length and breadth of our country as it relates to football. And for you, I can't go anything but other than ultras.
I thought you were going to go with that. I thought
Okay.
earlier today you were going to go with ultras. We
Okay.
have very different opinions on ultras.
Well, well, yeah. Anyways, okay. Let's get into this a little bit, and we can figure out what differences are. But no, I think ultras side of football, the type of sport they bring, I think, is really encouraging. I think and really positive, and shows a devotion and a passion for their club and helping them win all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, there's a downside, as often tied into most or into ultra movements in general is, a proclivity for violence and, or what, hooliganism or what, like whatever.
But surprisingly is not one of the reasons that I have a different viewpoint on them.
Yeah. And there's kind of some unwritten codes around how they function and whatever. But yeah, I see them mostly in a positive light. And I think when we talk about in Canadian soccer, you look at what some of the groups have done and what they've brought, and how they've helped shape and form the culture in our country, I think is huge, right? So for me, I can't help but first think of U Sector, right? It was originally called Ultras Toronto or Toronto Ultras, supporting the Lynx back in the A League days. And as they made the transition to supporting Toronto FC with its birth in 2007, I think that's when they switched from Ultras Toronto or whatever to U Sector, partly because of some of the connotations in our country for that word, both misunderstood and negative. And again, played a huge role in shaping the community, the supporter culture around TFC, and it being this thing that was, the stadium. One of the parts of the successes of Toronto FC is they did not cater to families. They were not like, hey, this is a great family event, bring your family. They're like, no, this is an adult event. There's lots of drinking, there's lots of swearing, there's lots of whatever. Like, this is what this is. They didn't hide it. They didn't say don't bring your kids, but it was not catered towards kids. And it was helped because it was, if you go back and look, I think their season tickets soared the day that Beckham signed, in MLS and whatever. They had these different things that also impacted it. But U Sector went in and was into the MLS era, was a huge part of what made Toronto FC a great place to be in terms of supporting at a match. I spent in 2000, the 2007. That was the year of the Under-20 World Cup. So I was in Toronto for the Under-20 World Cup. I went to one game with some people from U Sector, which was the TFC versus Aston Villa friendly, and hung out with some people who I sort of knew from the Voyageurs and stuff. It was great. Again, I won't touch on all the different groups, Michael, but you can't talk about ultras in Canada without then also talking about UMO2. Ultras in Montreal and all their massive contributions to their club and the wonderful things they've done in terms of, supporting the stadium and visual displays and standing up for, things around, the name of their club and all these different kind of things. And again, over the years, got to know so many of their people and had so many great experiences with them around club football, but then also national team games. Even I remember the day Canada qualified for the World Cup in the victory over Jamaica. After the game, my family went one way, and I took a long walk from BMO Field to a pub that Voyageurs were meeting at, and I walked with my friend Daniel, who was a long time leader within the UMO2 movement. I still stay in touch with some of the dudes from over there. And then you've seen different groups spread up, since then. In Toronto, you think of Inebriati. In the CPL now, you have some ultras in places like Halifax. We saw some in Calgary for the super match, and I think I think Ottawa. There's some in Ottawa as well, or whatever. And I think for the most part, they've been been really, really positive. There have been some clashes between, especially people from Toronto and Montreal. Some scarves taken.
There's been a lot worse than that.
Unfortunate moments back. Yeah, unfortunate moments.
But it's not March, so we won't go into that.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, the biggest probably national thing on the national stage that was known, not violence, but was the Voyageurs Cup game, where for some reason the inebriati and Toronto supporters were, I think, on the opposite side. They were on the non-camera side at the Voyageurs Cup match at Lansdowne Field, or whatever it's called, TD Place, or whatever they call it now. And I think Toronto had scored or whatever, and they lit a flare, like a real proper flare, and then it fell into a drum or something, and like there was an actual fire, which I still hear about from people within the CSA about like how cautious and how concerned they are about, that type of thing happening at a football match, understandably so. But no, I think ultras in Canada have really helped shape the culture and help things progress in this country. And in general, I would say I'm someone who personally views the ultra movement as a positive. I personally, I'm not a big fan of the politics, and within ultras around the world, obviously there are some that are super right wing or super left wing, and there's maybe less so some that are more centrist. People in the back in the day used to always ask, like, "Oh, Curva Collective, are you guys ultras or whatever?" And we would always say no, because there's so many things about what it means to be ultra that just weren't who we are as people, aside from maybe like the support in the stadium, like going hard and giving our all, and the visual displays, which ultras are also, highly known for around the world. Those were the ways we were linked to that movement, I think, the closest. And yeah, so for me, I think that's a big part of the Canadian supporter culture story. And one of the more interesting things, I don't know, from my perspective, when I think about even just my time, supporting the club football in our country. What are the things that I want to hear your concerns?
Like, I'm with you on the atmosphere that they bring, the displays, the 90 minutes of getting behind the team. One of the issues I have with them is not all groups, but there definitely is some self-importance to them that is a bit misplaced. Now, even today at the Miami game against Portland, I don't know if you're even aware of this, the Miami fans were quiet for the first 10 minutes of the game or something. They didn't make any noise because the players hadn't come over and acknowledged them at the end of the last couple of games, and they felt slighted. And to me, that's just a little bit too much self-importance.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. There's also a thing about that topic that I won't, maybe you and I will talk about off
There was a bit during the game, like Messi was even seen waving to them towards the end. And the commentators were like, "Oh, this is because they feel slighted that no one's been paying attention to them." And that's the other part. It's again, it's not all groups, but a lot of it is like, "Oh, look at us," tying in with the self-importance. And it's a big debate that's happening in Scotland just now, because there's a big ultra movement there. Mm-hmm. And it's been one of the biggest breaths of fresh air to Scottish football. It's like reinvigorated stadium atmospheres. But tied in with that, you've got different groups. And there's a 3-part BBC documentary that I keep meaning to give you to watch that's quite cringe-worthy in bits. But it is interesting because it looks at a one-man ultra for a really small team that goes with his mum and just bangs the drum, and they're called the Spartans Ultras. But then you go to the top end, the Old Firm, and it's the ultras there that all wear balaclavas and cause trouble and you can't identify them. And you've got the old school fans in Scotland that are like, yeah, they're just troublemakers, we don't want them. And the folk like, no, we need this because there's no atmosphere. And I think there can be a happy medium between the groups so that everyone's happy. But there's a lot of people in Scotland at the moment that's using the ultra movement just to mask being able to be violent.
Yeah.
And then that paints everyone in a bad light.
Yeah. Later in the show, I'll maybe we'll talk. Actually, I have in our signing off segment, I have some other things that connect to this conversation. No, I don't disagree with you, and I agree with you in terms of the. I mean, as a supporter, my take was always just like, if you're focused on what light are we going to be shown in, then your focus is on the wrong thing. Your focus needs to be on your support for your club. Like, it needs to be on your club. And if your support is quality and meaningful and whatever, then people show it, right? Like, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, if, you don't have to worry about that. If you do things in a good way and the way you want and the way that you think they should be, and other people feel the same, then you'll get the exposure some of those people might want. The self importance thing, I think, is kind of interesting. I think I agree with you in your take on what you talked about there, but yeah, there are, obviously we're talking more not so much in North American or Canadian context. There are, we see some of these things where the accountability between the fans and the players more so on the effort given for the club. I think
Yes.
I think that some of that I can appreciate, might not be the right word, but I can at least understand and to some degree respect.
But there's lines that are crossed as well, like Sport in Lisbon, the ultras breaking in and attacking the training facility, like when Freddie Montero was there.
Yeah.
And there's other stories of that as well. But I mean, they do a lot of good for the game. And I thought you might have gone for ultras as your notable mention. But no, that makes sense. That's your main one. I'll give you my main one quickly, and then I've just got one notable mention. So I've gone for the University of British Columbia Thunderbirds.
Nice.
Or University Soccer, really, because it's strong here, not to the stage that it is in the US. But UBC have just been a phenomenal force in the college game here in Canada. On the men's side, they've won the most titles of 14, and they've also won the most women's titles as well with 9. And for one university to do that, that's just a tremendous achievement. So that's my main selection. My notable mention is upsets and underdogs. And I'll just throw a few Whitecaps ones into this category. The 1979 Soccer Bowl run. The big upset was when the Whitecaps knocked off the Cosmos in the Western Conference final. No one expected them to do that. The Cosmos had won in 77, 78. They won it again in 1980. And then they shocked them in a 3-game series, but it was a mini game, it was the third game in that Western Conference final to get to the Soccer Bowl. And then whilst the Whitecaps were still a USL team in the Canadian Championship, they beat Toronto at BMO in 2008. And who scored the winning goal that day? Martin Nash from the penalty spot. And then the following year, even better, at Swan Guard, I still remember this game. Whitecaps 2, TFC 0, pair of goals from Ansu Toure, 2 tremendous upsets. And then keeping the Canadian Championship, TSS Rovers obviously became the first team to be a professional team or first semi-pro team to be a professional team when they knocked out Valor. We've seen a couple of bigger shocks since, and even this year, the CPL side Atletico Ottawa knocking out TFC in this year's championship. So that's my notable mention, upsets and underdogs. Do you have a notable mention, or was you more of a struggle?
I'll go with Steve Pander's Umbrella Academy.
Oh,
I don't have any others. Those are great though.
Yeah,
I love yours.
You use a tough letter, and we've got some tougher ones coming up to round this section off. But yeah, we will be back with an easier letter next week, the letter V, and that was this week's Canadian Soccer A to Z. And we'll be back with more football chat now in the next part as we round up the week's MLS and CPL action after this episode's song, track 22, the final one on New Musical Express's groundbreaking and influential C86 cassette.
Hi, I'm Ryan Alumi, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
We could laugh and tell jokes all night long. Another glass and I'm sure I could explain. But you can maybe guess that I've got to see your friend again. just got to see this through. My heart beats so fast whenever you are near. My tongue gets fired up whenever you can hear. When I touch your hand, why do we have to hide behind these doors? If the world doesn't understand, then the world has got to learn. At least I know it's late. Oh, but this boy can wait. Oh, this boy can wait. There's nothing more that you can do. I've just got to see this through.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's this episode's song from Enemy's C86 cassette. And it's the last track from the 22-track cassette. We've played them all for you in the last few weeks. And the plan going forward now is we're going to play other songs from bands that were tagged in the C86 genre, some other songs from 1986 from bands that featured on the cassette as well. But the band you heard there is probably the most prolific band from the cassette. Leeds band, The Wedding Present, and that was their song, This Boy Can Wait a Little Longer, which is an extended version of their song, This Boy Can Wait, which you can find on the flip side of their third single, You Should Always Keep in Touch with Your Friends. Formed in Leeds in 1985, The Wedding Present were originally around up to 1997, went on a brief hiatus. Lead singer David Gedge, who's the constant in the band for all their time, went on to form the band Cinerama, that were kind of producing musical scores, film soundtracks, stuff like that. But the songs were getting more wedding present sounding. So the band reformed in 2004. They're still going strong today. And just last month, they were here playing in Vancouver. A gig I missed because I hadn't seen it advertised and it was sold out by the time that I saw it. But I mentioned the band is probably the most prolific one from the original 22 artists on the C86 cassette. To date, they've released 54 singles, 17 EPs, 9 studio albums, 24 live albums, and 21 compilation albums. If you want a good jumping in point for the band, I highly recommend the debut album, 1987's George Best. Features a great picture, iconic picture of George Best on the cover. And the band actually sought and received permission to name the album after the Northern Ireland football legend. And Best himself agreed to appear on various promotional shots with the band to plug the album. It's a tremendous album, and when we get back to doing albums of the month, that's one I will bring you some songs from. I also recommend the band's Hit Parade 1 and 2 albums, which aren't greatest hit compilations, but the end result of the band releasing a single every month for a year, with the A-side being a brand new song and the B-side a cover of a song that they loved. And if you want to go really weird, you can also check out their album of Ukrainian music, which is kind of like a 10-inch maxi single, but it's also like mini album. And bizarrely, I have that, as I do a lot of the Wedding Present songs. So hopefully you enjoyed the one we played there. Hopefully you've enjoyed the original 22 tracks from the cassette. Let's see where this section takes us now for the rest of the year. Back to the football chat now. And in this part, we're going to round up the week's action in both Major League Soccer and the Canadian Premier League. And we'll start off in MLS. And of course, it's been a busy few days in the league. Midweek, almost a full slate in the entire league. Every Western team in action midweek. And then busy penultimate weekend before the World Cup break this past weekend. And although it didn't go well for the Whitecaps in Houston, results elsewhere, as we mentioned, certainly did work in the Whitecaps' favour. And although they've lost the lead in the Supporters' Shield standings to Nashville after their 3-2 win over LAFC on Sunday evening, they're still top of the Western Conference, having gone there with a midweek win over Dallas. And a big part of that is due to San Jose, who are still sitting in second place, tied on 29 points with the Whitecaps, having played a game extra. But after that 1-0 draw with the Whitecaps last weekend, San Jose have now lost 2 straight. 2 5-goal thrillers as well, being on the wrong end of 3-2 defeats. And they were outplayed on Wednesday night in Seattle. They opened the scoring 2 minutes in from Nick Fernandez, but Albert Rusnak penalty just before half-time and a Jesus Ferreira goal 10 minutes in the second half put Seattle back into the lead. Preston Judd levelled things in the 69th minute for the Quakes, but good old Dero Osaze de Rosario with a header in the 89th minute gave Seattle the 3 points. And although that was great from a Whitecaps perspective, Seattle is a team that I'm a little bit worried about because they do seem to be hitting a good run of form at the moment. But the Quakes dropping 3 points in that game obviously did help the Whitecaps, let them go to the top of the MLS West. And it didn't get any better for San Jose on Saturday night at home to the team that the Whitecaps had just beaten midweek, FC Dallas. And again, it was another early goal in this one, but this time it went against San Jose with Patrickson Delgado opening the scoring with a little deflection in the first minute. But the Quakes came storming back, levelled things up in the 18th minute through Bo Leroux. 4 minutes into the second half, Petar Musa continued his rich goal-scoring vein, getting his 12th goal of the season. And then San Jose kind of just threw everything at Dallas, and you felt they were going to get the breakthrough. A string of saves from former Whitecap, albeit just on loan during the COVID times. But Jonathan Sirwa got his first start in goal for Dallas. String of top saves from Sirwa. Couldn't do anything, though, to keep out Reid Roberts in the 81st minute. That levelled things up at 2-2. And you kind of thought if any team was going to go and get the winner, it was going to be San Jose, and it would send them back to the top of the West. But I'm sure many of you have seen this goal. 3 minutes in stoppage time, Sam Sarver racing in on goal, tucking it away, and a celebration for the ages. A little scuba dive from 4 of them off the back of one of the advertising hoardings, celebrating in front of the San Jose Ultras, who didn't take kindly to that. Threw some stuff on the pitch, including a can of beer, which Sarver picks up, drinks, and then covers his face in it. Epic celebration, and one of those viral moments that's going to go around the world. And delighted that Dallas got the win here, 3-2. And yeah, have the wheels come off a little bit for San Jose? We've questioned their depth, and now we're kind of seeing, the pressure's been turned up a notch, and that's back-to-back defeats for them. But they sit level with the Whitecaps in second on 29 points. As mentioned, they have played a game more. I'll drop to 4th in the West just now, because we mentioned Seattle there. So they got the big win midweek at home to San Jose. But it was a bad Saturday night for them as well at Lumen Field, going down to a 2-0 defeat to the LA Galaxy. Gabriel Peck opened the scoring in the 23rd minute. Seattle basically threw everything they could at the Galaxy. They outshot them 15-8. They had the better of the possession. But then, as they were pushing for the equaliser in stoppage time in the 92nd minute, a quick Galaxy counter. So Peck play it inside to Nascimento. He tucks it away, and it was 2-0 to the Galaxy. And a string of big saves in this one as well from LA keeper JT Marcinkowski. And big 3 points for the Galaxy, helping the Whitecaps out along the way. That keeps Seattle in 4th now in the MLS West. They're sitting on 24 points from their 12 matches. So they've played a game less than the Whitecaps, and they're now sitting 5 points back from the Caps. 3rd place is RSL, who are on a little bit of a tear once again, led by their youngsters. RSL had a big 3-0 win against Houston midweek. An own goal at the start of the second half opened the scoring before a pair of goals from Xavier Gozo, who is in absolute fire at the moment. And they followed that up with a home victory in the Rocky Mountain Cup, 2-1 against Colorado on Saturday evening. Gozo again on the score sheet in the 36th minute, levelling things up after Frederick had put the Rapids ahead. And then Sergei Salans got the winner in the 68th minute. And RSL looking very, very good, playing some lovely football still. And Gozo really making a name for himself. The 19-year-old RSL homegrown, 6 goals now on the season for RSL. I mean, you could argue he's like the in-form US striker at the moment. He's been capped at every level for the US up to under 23s. I know some folk have said maybe even a wild card to get on the States World Cup roster this time around. I think it just comes a little bit too early for him. If he'd maybe been in this form towards the end of last year as well, going into this year, maybe you could kind of give a nod to him. But he is the guy to watch just now. So exciting, very entertaining. And the way that he's pushed on, I think, is the way that many here hoped that Ryan Illumi might have pushed on this year. And although we haven't seen that from Ryan yet, the hope is still there that with a run of games and just some regular minutes that he'll get up to these levels. But Gozo's been one of the stories of the season for me so far. And I haven't done my All-Star media voting yet, but I've got to say he's in my mind at the moment for one of those front 3 roles in my final selection. So we'll look over that in the next couple of days. So RSL sitting in 3rd on 25 points from 13 games, 4 behind the Caps. Dallas sitting in 5th on 22. Houston now on 21 after that victory over Vancouver. LAFC not in the best run of form just now, sitting down in 7th. They're on 21 points from their 14 games played, and they've played a game more than the Whitecaps. They're sitting 8 points back from them. And you can be pretty sure that they're going to invest over the summer, make some additions. Son, who's still really not in the form that we saw last year, will get that little bit of a break, although he will be at the World Cup. But he might get some time off in between the World Cup finish in Korea being out and LAFC being back in action. But he must be exhausted right now. But to be this far ahead of LAFC at this point of the season, great from a Whitecaps point of view, because you do expect them to make a bit of a late run. LAFC are now winless in 4 MLS matches, 5 games overall, and if you include the Toluca game in the Champions Cup semi-final. They started May with a 2-0 draw at San Diego. They went down to a big 4-1 defeat at home to Houston. We talked then, was that just a hangover from that Toluca game? But midweek, going down 2-1 at St. Louis was definitely one of the shock results of these last batches of matches. They were 2-0 down after goals from Totland and Santos, pulled one back through David Martinez, couldn't find the equaliser. They outshot St. Louis 17-8, but if you don't put them in the back of the net, those stats count for nothing. Then there's a big match-up on Sunday. It was a very entertaining game that finished Nashville 3, LAFC 2. A hat-trick for Hani Mukhtar. 2 stunning free-kick goals in that hat-trick as well. They were 2-0 up before David Martinez, right after Nashville got their second, made it 2-1. Mukhtar again, just before the hour mark, made it 3-1 before Buanga set up quite an interesting finale in the 68th minute. Nashville held on, and I was a little bit torn because a draw in this one Still wouldn't have got LAFC too much closer to the Whitecaps, but would have kept Nashville off the lead for the Supporters' Shield. But I think in the grand scheme of things, you want LAFC to drop as many points as they can right now, and they've certainly been doing that off late, and a lot of work maybe for Mark DeSantis to do now going into the World Cup break. So they're sitting 7th, as mentioned, in the standings on 21. One of 3 teams on 21, with Houston above them, Minnesota just underneath them, and the Galaxy now in 9th place on 19 points. San Diego, the Whitecaps' opponents this coming weekend, somewhat worryingly, unbeaten in 4 now. They started the month with a draw at home to LAFC, as mentioned, and a draw at Seattle. They spanked Austin 5-0 midweek and were looking really, really good in that. And then on Saturday, at home to FC Cincinnati, finished 3-3. And they thought they'd won it, as Ingvartsen, who's another player in a rich vein of form just now, scored in the 96th minute for San Diego. And you thought that was it, before Barlow went up the other end immediately from kickoff and levelled it at 3-3. So you wonder, like, if they'd come away with that 3-2 win, they're going into this Whitecaps game full of confidence against a Whitecaps team that's going to be missing some key pieces. But now you kind of wonder what letting that go in might do to their psyche. Either way, it's certainly going to be a tough one at Snapdragon Stadium next Saturday. We've got Colorado in 11th on 16 points, Portland on 12th on 14, Austin in 13th on 14 points, and St. Louis on 13 points in 14th place. And let's give a big shout out to Sporting Kansas City. They've looked woeful all season long so far, but this has been a nice little couple of days for them. Back-to-back wins, 3-1 over the Galaxy midweek, and then 2-1 at a really faltering Austin side on Saturday. Have they turned things around? Has Raphael Wiki suddenly found a way for them to win? Certainly something to keep a close eye on. But that is the MLS West. So just before we move away from MLS, I just want to mention a couple of other things from the East, really. So TFC went down to a 3-1 defeat at Charlotte. 13 of the 27 rostered players for TFC were unavailable from injury. 48% of their roster. Like, Whitecaps had some big injuries last year, but 48% is like insane.
And how much of their salary was that percent?
Well, Josh Sargent's one of them, so that's a big chunk. That's crazy. And they gave a good account of themselves against Charlotte as well. They scored to make it 2-1, and I think it was really harshly ruled out for a block, they said, that Osaria did. And I think it was nonsense. It was a block that they say stopped a player run in to get to the player that then scored. And it was nonsense.
Yeah.
Tough for TFC. Also tough for Columbus, who's not in a good run of form just now.
Yeah.
And they fired head coach Henrik Rydstrom today after just 14 games of the season. Sources say that he never really got buy-in from the locker room. Laurent Courtois has taken over as interim head coach. But, I mean, it's surely shaping up. Is the return of Wilfred Nancy on the cards?
Do you think, like, what he would want?
I don't think you should go back to your former love or success story, because
which is why I'm
doomed to fail.
Which is why I'm thankful you've never fallen out of love with me, Michael.
Yes. Like, to put it in East Fife terms, we had a legendary manager, Dave Clark, who took us from bottom club in the bottom tier to just missing out on promotion to the Premier League in the last day of the season. And he was with the club as a player from the late 60s. He was player manager from the late 70s and was in charge for a number of years and then left to go to a Premier League team. He then came back when the club were struggling, and he was older and the game had kind of moved on a bit, and he had a really tough year and a half in charge before resigning, and it kind of tarnished his legacy a little bit. And if Nancy doesn't come in and do well at Columbus, it will tarnish his legacy a little bit there. So I don't know that he would go back.
The legacy is one piece, but then, yeah, I think you're right. It's hard to duplicate. But beyond the legacy, then what does it mean for him next, right? Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, he failed big time at Celtic, and then he leaves, and Celtic go on and win the championship.
I think a lot of people will say, yeah, he failed at Celtic, but he also maybe wasn't given that much of a leash, right? Which fair, unfair, whatever, however you want to look at that. But no, I think if he comes back, if he doesn't do well, then yeah, what does that mean for his long-term future? Also, does he want to come back and be more of a long-term manager in MLS, like someone who's at a club for 5+ years, right? Like in one stretch, not over two stretches. But I don't know. It just feels like the fans or like the journalists or something. And I agree with you. I would worry about how it would play out and what it would mean in the long run for him.
He needs to go somewhere else outside of MLS and do well.
Yeah.
Or talking of tarnishing, his whole coaching reputation's tarnished.
Yeah, because a lot of it's built on what he did there. I know here we also I think most people respect what he did in Montreal, but really it's like the higher achievement is obviously with Columbus, and then if you go back and you can't duplicate it, then yeah, where are you going to coach next? USL or maybe like lower leagues in Europe, maybe, or like lower divisions in Europe, like.
He's also going to be in a good payout from Celtic for the next few years as well. So I'm sure he's not in any big rush to come back.
Yeah. And does that end if he gets the job right away?
Yeah, it does. I was surprised at the timing of this in one sense, in that I do think there's going to be a few coaches sacked in the World Cup break. So it's like, why did Columbus not wait one more week? Now, they would say, like, if he's lost the dressing room, you want to do it now, to maybe try and get a response in the last game before the World Cup break to send you into that on a high. There's some big name MLS managers out there. So whether they maybe feel or there could be more sackings happening, so we want to get ahead of the curve and maybe get one of these guys.
It's the head of the curve option, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be the first, so then you have the better options.
Because I mean, technically, Miami's still looking for their permanent manager. It's just Hoyos is in charge just now.
I don't think Miami's looking for their manager. I think their captain is looking for who he wants to be their manager.
No, that's true. So it probably will be the guy that's there as interim for now. Just to end the MLS chat, and I know we had kind of moved away from this section, but I wanted to talk about the battle for the Canadian number one. From recent matches, for me, Max Crepeau has now taken that number one jersey. I think he's moved ahead of Dane on his current form. Some of the big performances that he's coming up with. Had another good performance this weekend. Dane, I know he's got a shaky defence in front of him. So does Max. And I want to give a big shout out for James Pantemis. I would like him, and we touched on this earlier, but I'd like him to get that third spot. He has been really good this season and was excellent against Miami today for Portland. But yeah, for me, I think Max should be the guy that's starting against Bosnia.
I'm glad we finally agree on something.
Yeah, I've come around on that.
Yeah. I still think Jesse Marsh is going to go with Dane, but I think it should be Max.
I don't know now, but we'll see. I guess they'll both probably get one of the warm-up games. One will get Uzbekistan, one will get Ireland.
If Jesse is still wanting to make them both feel or keep them both on their toes or whatever, yeah, then I could see that. If
the next time Jesse talks, he's going to get asked again because he gets asked every single window.
Yeah, but that's like a North American thing. They love a goalkeeping.
Oh, yeah. Or like, who's going to be the captain?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, my.
That's it for the MLS chat. Let's turn our attention to the Canadian Premier League now, just to round off this part, and a quick roundup of the week's action in that. There was also some midweek action as Forge hosted Supra in their annual school day match on Wednesday. 15,122 fans in attendance, children from the Hamilton area schools, to see Dan Nimick give Forge a 1-0 victory thanks to his 56th minute goal. And I really like the initiative that Forge have done here. We had our first school series matches here in the BCPL this week as well. I was commentating out at Bear Creek Stadium in Surrey as Unity hosted Vancouver Rise Academy on the Wednesday, and then they hosted Whitecaps Academy on the Thursday, and over 2,500 local school children invited to that one as well. It's a big success, and I really like that the clubs are doing that, and hopefully it's something that we see a little bit more of, because particularly with the BCPL games, people went to that cheering on the Whitecaps on the Thursday, and the hope is that these kids are going to go along, have enjoyed what they saw, and want to know more about their local smaller team, Unity, and get out to some of these matches. And in the CPL as well, these are the fans of the future. So I love what they're doing. Forge have had a big success with that over the years, over 15,000 in this one, and that was just tremendous. That win saw Forge keep to the top of the CPL standings, sitting on 16 points from their 6 matches played, 5 wins, and just the 1 draw and just the 1 goal given up so far as well. The remaining 3 matches were all played on Sunday. Defending champions Atletico Ottawa came away with a narrow 1-0 victory at home to Vanni Sartini's Halifax Wanderers. Jonathan Villau getting the only goal in the 31st minute. Halifax just struggling in the final third. They just don't have the explosive pace. They don't have the finish, the creativity at the moment. And it's been a little bit of a struggle for Vanni's Halifax side right now. Sitting in 6th in the standings on 5 points from their 6 games. Just that 1 solitary win so far, which was the season opener at Vancouver FC. And there's more problems for last place Pacific FC on Sunday over on the island, going down to a 1-0 loss to Inter Toronto. Sebastian Gonzalez got the only goal of the game in the 70th minute. And Pacific showed some flashes, but again just seemed to be lacking in the final third. They weren't helped by Juan Quintana, who was finally fit on the pitch, getting a straight red card in the 77th minute. And Alejandro Diaz had missed a first-half penalty for Pacific as well. Diego Arteaga with a big save on that. I don't think it should have been a penalty to begin with. It went to a video review. It was given in the end. I think it was a little bit of a soft one. But James Merriman's side, rock bottom of the CPL, 1 point from their 6 games, still looking for that first win. Vancouver FC, just their 1 victory of the year. They're sitting on 4 points right now. They went down to a 2-0 defeat at home to the team that the Whitecaps will be playing in the Canadian Championship, Tommy Beelden Jr.'s Cavalry FC. And it was a closely contested game. Vancouver looked good in stages, just again couldn't find the finish. They fell behind to a 70th minute goal from Toby Warshevsky. And then as we were pushing for the equaliser, a rare mistake it has to be said, from Callum Irvin in the 97th minute, allowed Levi Lang to tuck the ball home to make it 2-0 to Cavalry. So you were at the game tonight, Zach. Just some quick thoughts from you on it?
Cavalry is an incredibly stacked side in the Canadian Premier League. An incredible starting lineup, and with some really quality options off the bench. And it's hard to see past them, because not only, we've seen Forge this year not play their best and yet still get results.
And they've only given 1 goal up.
Yeah. But this Cavalry side, I think, is just stacked. Talking to Tommy Wilden after the game, both in the press conference and a little bit afterwards, they really, one of the things that they're really trying to focus on is cutting out the needless goals that they've given up in the past. I think Nate Ingham has helped with that. I think the way they have this backline playing, when you add you lose Tom Field and you add Amir Didic. Like, the twin towers of Klomp and Didic are like just massive. And then they brought in a really great player on loan in Adam Perlman, who was with Halifax last year on loan from Toronto FC, who is, I think, a player I was interested to see how things would play out from this year, and so far, and now having been able to see him up close, really, really great. One of the most interesting things for me, Michael, from a tactical standpoint in this game was just watching how Cavalry, under the pressing and the counter pressing from Vancouver, were moving Dan Klomp from his center back role into midfield and kind of moving from a back four into a back three, and then pushing Camargo further forward and or into space around the pitch to then hopefully unlock the wingers, in particular Musi. The game all turned essentially on coaching. Tommy Wheeldon taking off, was it Musi and Kenija Elva, and bringing on Edwards. That changed the game. And he put Edwards on the left, and he put Antigone on the right. And Antigone is the one who plays through the ball for Toby Warcheski to break through and score the goal. Also, from a VFC perspective, this is the first time this season in a league game where they have not, I mean, they were probably the better team in the first half, and both coaches, I think, alluded to that, but where they were not the better teams in terms of all the chances they created. Like they created very few like quality chances. I think the best chance of the game might have been maybe Mosquito's shot from outside the box in the second half that had some movement on it that, you know, Ingham was able to get behind. And so I think that's a little bit concerning, because even when they were not getting the results earlier in the year, it was like the performance was there. Today was probably the worst league performance, I would say, even though it wasn't bad, and it caused Cavalry some problems. But Cavalry were able to pivot, and unfortunately, you know, VFC weren't. And Martin Ash talked after the game, was as simple as Proctor and or Field making a timely foul. I mean, if it was Field, it could have led to a sending off. But that was the kind of difference in the game. It was a fun game to be at. And again, really good to talk to the coaches and the players afterwards, and really excited. One of the things Ingham said was this VFC, in his opinion, this VFC side is a really good side that is going to go on a run. And he's just thankful that run did not, you know, continue against them or kind of really start against them.
They just need to have better quality in the final third.
Yes.
Then once the goals start to come, there is a good team there.
Yeah.
I tell you, the Whitecaps are in for a battle against Cavalry as well.
Oh, my. Yeah. Those games, especially if Cavalry stays healthy, the Whitecaps of this moment right now, I think it will be a challenge for them.
Well, it's the Caps' first game back as well.
Yes.
After the break, whereas Cavalry's going to have been playing.
Yeah. Tasty encounters.
Yeah. They move up to second in the standings, 14 points from their 6 games played, 2 behind. Forge still unbeaten, and 3 teams so far unbeaten at the top of the CPL. Forge, Cavalry, and Inter Toronto all looking for that first defeat, or trying to avoid that first defeat. So it's shaping up quite nicely. The top 3 that we thought were maybe going to break away, not quite playing out the way that we thought, but Atletico Ottawa hitting a little bit of their stride now as well, and we feel that they'll make a bit of a push, spurred on by that victory over TFC in the Can Champ. So yeah, a lot of CPL action when the World Cup's on as well during the MLS break, so try and get out to any games locally if you can. But that is it for our CPL roundup. That's pretty much it now for the show. But of course, we're going to finish with this episode's wavelength. And yes, I'm bringing you another Scotland World Cup song for 2026. And this one is very different. It was just released on May 14th. And it's from Scotland, the world's only Gaelic language metalcore band. They're called Gun Gil, which means without love. And they're from Larbert, which isn't in the Highlands or the islands of Scotland. It's just kind of outside Stirling. They were formed in 2023. Originally a kind of TikTok project from the main man behind it that's expanded now into a full touring band. They've got a couple of releases out. So this is their World Cup 2026 song. It's called Gun Alaba, which means no Scotland. And it's a riff on the famous Tartan Army chant, no Scotland, no party. Gun Gun Alaba. And that was this week's Wavelength song, another Scotland World Cup song for 2026, and the first one we've brought you in Gaelic. But that is it now for the show, Zach. Just before we go, any final thoughts from you? Anything that's caught your eye this week, or any shout-outs that you want to give?
We were talking about ultras earlier on the show, Michael. I want us to end with two stories of kind of ultra behavior in Europe and in, I guess, my favorite city in Europe. And that is the home of our good friend Flo in Munich. So we talk about the unsavory side. So some of the unsavory side, and again, these are parts that I just, partly why I'm not an ultra, things I can identify with, is some of the violence and some of the games that they play with each other where they try and take their counter banners, whatever. I can't. It was Mother's Day, so was that whatever the May 10th? So a week ago, a guy I know, a guy I consider a friend of mine. He's the leader of the Red Munichs. I've talked to him before, I think, on the show. His name's Andy. He also works for Bayern Munich as one of their supporter liaison guys. He and his wife were leaving a Bayern basketball game. They were going to or at a bus stop in Munich to go visit his mother-in-law for Mother's Day, when they were attacked by 5 or 6 1860 ultras in balaclavas, where they physically assaulted him, punched him in the face, kicked him while he was on the ground, stole a banner, stole his bag. As people from the bus stop came over to intervene, they pushed one of them into traffic where a car had to swerve to avoid hitting the individual, pushed into the street and took off. And that's the kind of stuff where I can't. That's the type of ultra behavior that I can never get behind and never be a part of and never want to be associated with. The second incident, which is much more harmless. Sunday, a week later, the 17th, Bayern was having their traditional celebration of the league win at the Marienplatz in downtown Munich. And it's you've probably seen the images of Fonzie doing this, Michael, where they're up on a balcony and there's thousands of people down below and celebrating, and they come up with the trophy and wave it around and all that.
Hopefully, he didn't injure himself.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard of any of that. Actually, there was they went to some discotheque or whatever, and there's all these videos of the Bayern players and families dancing and singing and rapping and whatever. It's quite interesting. Anyways, Michael, at the Marienplatz, as the celebrations are taking place, down on the crowd, again, thousands of people, right, in the Marienplatz, Michael, a giant overhead gets unfurled on top of the crowd. And the crowd is happily sort of, for I don't know for how long, the crowd is kind of happily passing it around. And it looks like, if you just glanced at it, you're like, oh, it's the Bayern Munich logo. But instead of saying Bayern Munich around the outside of like it does, I've looked at different places. I haven't actually looked up the actual translation, but I think it says something along the lines of FC Farmers, and I'm quoting here, but sons of bitches. And then in one of the white diamonds on the Bavarian checker that's in the middle of the Bayern logo, it says 1860. So again, it's a different type of action from some ultras that I guess on some level is humorous. And I didn't reference the incident, but I text Flo and I just said something like, "Oh, bloody 1859." And Flo's response was quite funny. He said, first off, "When you have nothing else in life, ... yawn emoji." And then he said, "We have a saying, what does the proud oak care if a pig rubs against it?" Yeah, those are a couple of interesting football things this week that caught my eye. And yeah.
Well, in a similar vein, we didn't talk about this on last week's show, what happened in the Prague derby.
Oh, yeah.
The Slavia Ultras ran on the pitch with their team winning 3-2 and about to win the championship to try and attack the Sparta fans. And it's like, your team's about to lift a trophy and win a championship. Why on earth are you doing that?
Yep.
I think so many folk will have seen those images because it went all over the place. But yeah, I need to get that Ultras documentary to you. Curious to see what you make of it. A lot of it in Scotland, it's just like silly wee laddies trying to be hard men.
Yeah.
But there's also a darker, with the big teams like the Celtic and the Rangers, there's a darker infiltration from with political and racial and stuff involved in it as well. But yeah, that is it for this episode of the show. As always, thanks for listening. Take care and save the Caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.